Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lean On Me Radio and Podcast. My name is Rita Marie. I am a business mentor and a life coach and a GRG. If you don't know what a GRG is, it's grandparents raising grandchildren. Yes, I raised two grandchildren, ages 14 and 13, and it can be so difficult sometimes. Anyway, let's go ahead and get right on to the interview. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing the life coach. So, Coach, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? It is a pleasure to have you here today, and we will get right on to the interview.
Thank you. Hey, I am so excited to be here. It's just a privilege. Thank you so much. I am the life coach one. Lanahan is my name, aka Lanny, the life coach one, Lanahan Senior on Facebook, because you have to have a name. So that's the name. But I'm also on TikTok, High Notes, and UHive, and Snapchat, all under the same life coach one. Certified as a behavioral life coach, sober life coach, relationships life coach, and group life coach. A little bit about myself. It was a rough life. I'm not going to sugarcoat a lot of it. I'm going to just kind of give you the brief summary of kind of how it was. I was born a twin to a crack addicted mother who left me and my brother at the hospital the day we were born. My dad was in a submarine stuck somewhere during Vietnam, who on his second tour, after lying about his age to join the Army, so he would, or to choose to join the Navy, so he didn't get drafted in the Army, got a letter saying that we were wards of the state of California. And so he had to write a letter, and got a letter back from the president saying that because it was his second tour and he was coming back to do the honorable thing of taking me and my sons back, they let him go. And so my dad got stateside with two kids he had no clue how to raise. Got a job turning wrenches at a diesel place where he and my brother and I lived above a shop where he turned wrenches and during the day and then drank all night. And so he was part of an outlaw biker gang. We grew up through that. There was a lot of abuse, sexual abuse being passed around. My brother and I, my sisters ended up becoming trafficked there for a little bit. All through high school, it wasn't the whole high school, junior high experience, all of that. People, going on dates and all of that kind of stuff. That wasn't our life. I didn't realize my life was wrong until well into junior high school, when I sat at a friend's house and the family actually sat down and talked, and they had conversations and they did these things during the day. And me, when I sit down and eat, we sit down and eat real quick. We're out in the garage. Dad's out drinking. We're doing something. He has us moving or doing or all that other stuff. And to see that was weird. So we knew something was wrong. But by then, me and my brother were so far into what my dad had going on that we didn't know how to get out. And the only way we knew how to get out was to join the military ourselves. So I did. I joined the military to get out of the lifestyle. And then once I joined the military, I ended up getting into an accident while there. I joined the Navy. I was an aviation machinist mate on the USS George Washington CVN 79, which is a Nimitz class. And I ended up getting hurt and getting sent home because I had a collapsed lung. And when I got stateside, I didn't know what to do. So I fell back into the lifestyle of what I knew. And between all of the addictions, losing family members, friends, through all of that, quitting the hard drugs, but still drinking for years. I didn't quit drinking until about 5 years ago. So I'm 5 years sober. It'll be 6 years in September, which is awesome.
That's an awesome accomplishment. Yes, yes.
I was working in Oklahoma, and I was out on a site for 7 months, and we were clearing land. We were cutting trees, and we drank a lot. That's all the boys did out there. That's all we did was drink a lot. And they were a lot younger than I was. I was, in my early 40s, and That's all we did was drink. And I ended up making a mistake that I told myself that I would never do, which was relapse, and did a line of crystal meth. And when I realized what I did, I had to make a phone call, and I literally had to get myself out of that situation 24 hours later and quit drinking, because I told myself if it wasn't for the alcohol, I would have never done that line. So I knew the alcohol was the problem. So I had to quit because I was making poor decisions.
Right, right. My understanding is, I used to run a recovery home at, well, I had my own recovery home, and I was secretary of a recovery home for a while, kind of like a halfway house. Um, and basically, you know, they say when you're um, an addict, okay, that alcohol is a drug too. Um, Now, I don't quite know how to say this. I know that some people that are in addiction can drink and never touch that drug, but it's still that um, dependency. It's a numbing thing. It's like to get rid of whatever that feeling is that you're trying to escape. You know, can you explain a little bit maybe about how that feels and why people actually do the things that they do? They get into the drugs and the addiction.
I got into it, one, only because it was a lifestyle for me growing up. It was. My grandfather taught us how to roll joints at 3 years old. We were running marijuana and stuff across state lines and all that for my family, within the family and the club and all that growing up. And we thought it was cigarettes. I didn't know what weed was, what it really was, until I was probably about 10 years old. But before that, I thought it was just a weird color of tobacco, because grandpa would roll his tobacco and smoke it, and it was tobacco. So I figured, oh, this stuff is just hasn't been colored yet, because tobacco was brown and this stuff was green. So I figured they colored it. I was young, I didn't know. um, but it wasn't until, I don't know, my brother was, he had a problem about 13, 14 with drinking, and then by the time he hit high school, he was a full-blown alcoholic and a meth head. um, I, on the other hand, was different. Um, I did what I had to do to survive, but in high school was my escape. I liked going to school. I was part of the Key Club, 4-H, all of that. Stayed late, wanted to volunteer, do all that kind of stuff, because I didn't want to be at home. And I figured if I was at school, um, that would be a better place for me. So that's where I stayed. I stayed at school. Um, and that became a problem with my dad. And then that's when I turned to the drugs. I didn't turn to drinking like my brother did. I went straight into what my brother had already, you know, what it got led to was the crystal meth. And um, it was easy for us at that time to get, and our lives were just falling apart. And it was to escape home. It was to escape the abuse. It was to escape all of that. And even being at home, it was still an escape, even though we were in that environment, just to do it there. I remember there was a time my brother and I were hiding in the corner of our room because dad was on one of his rampages, and he was dragging my sisters down the hall because they didn't do the dishes right. And we froze because we were so high that we couldn't even get to our sisters. And normally that's what we would do. We would jump up and defend our sisters. But at this time, we couldn't do it because we were too high. We were too messed up. And I remember that being a problem. So I ran. I took off and ran. I didn't go home. I got myself a part-time job and finished high school and joined the military. That's what I did. My brother, he got his GED and joined the military before I did, but he got into too much trouble there and spent 9 years in Leavenworth while he was in. But
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
the addiction, it was an escape. I'm not
Hmm.
gonna, really was. It was an escape. And some drugs you can escape for hours, some drugs you're escape for days at a time. But that crash is so hard. And that's where that addiction comes, because the chemicals got your brain thinking that it's fixing you when it really isn't. And but you can't see that because you're so addicted to how it makes you feel. You're so addicted to that escape, to the point that once you hit rock bottom, you're realizing that addiction is making what you run away worse. It's making you this monster. It's turning into somebody that you'd never thought you'd be. Treating people that you shouldn't be treating. I mean, you never thought you'd be able to treat, because it's not you. You've become. I mean, for myself, I've become the monster that I ran away from. That's
Right. And would you say that, okay, because I know for a fact that most alcoholics and addicts become, or they have a tendency to have a lot of narcissistic behaviors, okay? And it is that monster, okay? And the drug has created that monster. But it stems a lot deeper than that, because I feel like unless we're actually working on ourselves, that we can't change those patterns. You know, those patterns have to be changed. It's already a learned behavior. So that behavior is still there even today, but you've learned other behaviors in order to overcome and not do those old behaviors. Am I making sense? Am I on point here?
it does make sense. There was a learned behavior
So,
for myself, which I learned at a very young age. And so that learned behavior becomes a routine, and that routine becomes a habit. And so, just like with addiction and recovery, there was a routine that became a habit that led to the addiction, whether it be trauma, self-inflicted, or PTSD, abuse, whatever it stems from. There was a pattern that led to it. Now we just got to figure out a pattern to work through it,
mhm, mhm,
to free ourselves from whatever guilt and whatever is attached to that. Because during that, like for myself, I was very self-destructive, and during my self-destructive behaviors, I hurt a lot of people in the long run.
mhm,
There was that behavior that I had to figure out, because I was a loose cannon, and so I had to learn how to reinvent a way to channel that negative energy into something that will work with me in a way. I guess I channel it in a positive way, that there's an outcome that is benefits me. And for me, it was violence and all that other stuff, that I ended up joining the gym, and I did MMA fighting for a few years, because that's where I channeled my energy. It was a positive way to do it. It was illegal. Nobody was getting arrested. Because I couldn't go to bars. I was always in and out of jails because I was drinking too much and just fighting all the time. And somebody told me, why don't you channel that energy into going to the ring? And my therapist at one point said, well, why don't you do that? So I did. And it helped. It actually helped. So
right. So, would you say that there are some narcissistic behaviors involved in the addiction with all of that?
oh yes. Oh yes. I know it. For me, the addiction was about me. And the reason I addicted about me was the poor me, or I was, or this happened, or, oh, this is how life is doing it. So, you give finger to life, and that's the excuse to use. And so you make it about yourself. You become the victim. You victimize yourself from the situations that led you there. Um, uh, uh, it's hard, because I've been a victim of abuse, but then I embellished that victim of abuse to say, this is why I have this behavior, so you should allow it because of this, when there's
Mhm.
excuse for the behavior. But at that time, that was my excuse. I had no other excuse to say except that this happened. This is what you get. This is what life made me the monster that I am. You allowed it to happen, when I had my argument with my parents at that time. And this is what you get. That was the attitude that I.
Right, right. Okay. So, Coach, we've gone through some of the past history and all that, and we don't need to really dredge too much more of that up. What I want to know right now is how you stopped using. What did you do? How did you find your way back?
I reached out to a friend who got me into a area where I was safe, so I could find the recovery center that I needed to be in, and I checked myself in. And then from that, I did outpatient therapy and did that for a few years. 3 counselors. I went through 3 therapists before I could find the right one, and went through therapy for that for a few years. And then during my therapy, I was like, man, I want to learn. And so I was doing night classes for behavioral studies, environments and things like that, how environment has affected our children, their environment, what happens when you have 2 working parents in a middle class to low class bracket, you know, to the statistics that leads to an upper middle class to a high class, all of that. That was all intriguing because a lot of that is systemic to certain behaviors because we are so, what's the word I'm looking for? We are absorbing so many different behaviors because of the social media we have at our fingertips. And so it's a lot for certain kids to get through, and it becomes a spot where I'd like to be able to figure out between all this chaos, can we figure out a way for the kids to realize that it's not about what's around you, in the sense, because it is when you have family that loves you and all of that, but a lot of it is what's within you and the power that you have within you. And you don't need a lot of these outside influences to enhance anything to cause an excuse for you to treat somebody a certain way just because everybody else is doing it, or you see it on Facebook or all of that. There's got to be another way of letting everybody know that despite our mistakes, despite our pasts, there's a way out of it. And I became a life coach is what I did. I went back to school and became a life coach because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help draw somebody out of their darkness and be that corner man like we all have when we're fighting, because there's that corner man there. They need to have somebody neutral. They need to have somebody who's been through it and understands that. They need to know that they're not alone. They need to know that somebody, regardless if it's me, and I can point them into someone in the right direction who I know that can fit them better, then by all means, I will do all of that as long as they feel comfortable knowing that there is a spot where they feel safe and somebody can sift through whatever chaos they're going through, because all we're trying to do is give them a safe spot to vent or find coping, or give them ideas that they can come up with themselves to find a coping mechanism that works for them so they can calm their mind, to figure out a way to stop the negative cycle and create a new mindset for themselves, a pattern for themselves, so they can achieve because we're all going to have a more peaceful life, a more just knowing that they can wake up and there's not so much chaos, there's calmness. They can feel calm. They can face the day.
Okay, so my next question was going to be, how did you become a life coach? Well, you just explained that, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So let's go into what it's like today. And, you know, what is your life like today? I know you're much happier. I know you're much more secure in yourself, that sort of thing. But what is your actual life like today? What are some of the things you enjoy doing other than life coaching?
Oh, wow. Well, if I'm not doing that, I am at home and playing in my garden where I got a dog. He's a Husky and German Shepherd mix named Ragnar. We have a cat named Edgar who just thinks he owns the house. We like to travel. Me and my wife do. In fact, I got married last November. So, and the day we met was May 13th, which is Friday. So we're going to do something there. It's pretty awesome. But
Well,
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That is so awesome.
I'm at peace with myself, a lot more than I was years ago. My family that I talk to with now, they're at peace and we're at peace. And it was a hard road because there was this whole blame game and all of that going on. And, some family members were like, good for you. Some family members, it took them years, to actually come out and say, hey, we're proud of you and stuff. And I couldn't let those family members during those years, because they couldn't forgive me. I couldn't blame myself for that. That's on them. I'd come to them and let them know, hey, I'm sorry, holding myself accountable. The addiction wasn't the excuse, my behavior wasn't an excuse, things like that. But the two mixed together, and how, it was just putting myself accountable and humbling myself, because there's those steps you got to do. And the family members meant something to me. And then just within the last 2 years, they finally came out and were like, well, we're really proud of you. We see a really big change. And if we wanted to sit back and wait and see if it was true, that's all we wanted to do for ourselves. And I get it. I do. I get it. Because I burnt a lot of bridges, during my addiction. I totally get it and stuff. But there's a time and a place for everything in recovery. It happens every day. Like we discussed earlier, there's like a recovered, person in recovery. And I believe that. I totally
Right.
do, because everyday process, but we can be recovered, so.
Right.
Okay, so now is the time. I'm going to go ahead and open everybody's mic, and we can get started with the guests asking the questions. So, Tyler, I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead and ask your question.
Life coach. How long you been on Clapper recently?
The last time I was on Clapper was Monday. I did the Monday mental health check-ins with me and Canceled Reality MJ. We do that together now. And
Wow.
post a video twice a month, but I'm on it all the time.
Wow. You ain't kidding. Clapper is popular app these days, But do those glitches and you'd be in good shape. Point and done.
Thank you, Tyler. Sue, do you have any questions for the life coach?
No, I'm just enjoying listening.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. Okay, so coach, then we have basically come to the end of the interview. Now there was something that you wrote in the Telegram group earlier today. I don't know if you can get your hands on that and maybe read it, because I think it would do our audience some really good. I mean, I love the things you have to say. And then I'd like for you to leave with a closing statement, maybe something to inspire others and let them know that they can do this,
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All righty, I found it. All right, now this is what I wrote this morning in, both in the Read Your Recovery page as well. I wrote, we do not need to be perfect to be loved. We do not need to look perfect, be perfectly funny, interesting, sexy, or strong to be worthy to breathe oxygen and take up space. We don't need to earn the right to exist. We don't have to justify the oxygen we breathe or the space we take up. There's no denying that certain qualities can make us more attractive to certain people, so we get it in our heads that we have to have those qualities or we'll end up alone. Real human attachments are more complex than just that. You are more than what you look like. You are more than how attractive you happen to be to a certain person at a certain moment. I know our culture is clear and brutal about many of the qualities it values. We glorify certain skin colors, physical characteristics, and income levels, but much of that is superficial or accidental. As we get better, we learn that we can decide for ourselves that worth is all about for us, worth is all about for us. We can decide for ourselves what makes our lives worth living. We don't have to listen to the culture or accept what society thinks should make for a worthy person. Easy does it. Your life really does belong to you. Though really, deeply accepting that is going to take a minute. And that's what I wrote there this morning.
Oh, wow. I love that. I just love that. I was so not only mesmerized by it, and I'm mesmerized by all your writings that you put in the groups, but it just like, it all hits home, you know? I can relate to it. Um, Even though I'm not myself a recovering alcoholic or addict, or in recovery, nor have ever been addicted to anything but cigarettes, and that is an addiction. Okay, so yes, I do have an addiction problem that I hope to break eventually. But I just love everything that you bring to the table. So I want to thank you for being here today. I really enjoyed this time with you, and I'd like to leave with a closing statement from you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed being here. This was an honor and a privilege just to be interviewed. It was great, and be able to share a little bit about me, in my history and how I am now. But the closing statement I have, is it's what I always say. It's my catchphrase. I wouldn't say catchphrase. It's just what I tag. Be you, be true. Authenticity inspires hope. And sometimes even in our broken moments, we are being authentic. And even in our authentic broken moments, it's a learning moment. And not only are we learning, but someone else could also learn from it too. So share your story, because you never know who it could help.
I agree 100%. Okay, so again, the life coach, the underscore life coach one. Okay, is that across all your platforms like that?
Yeah, everywhere. The Facebook is Lanny, the life coach, Lanahan Senior.
Okay, so I will be putting all of his links in the description of this podcast and also on YouTube. Again.
Okay, so again, I want to thank everyone for being here today and everyone who has participated, and especially the life coach. Life coach, it was a pleasure doing this interview with you again, and I hope to have you back in the future. With that, everyone, be blessed, and I'll see you in the next one.